Hi everybody, I'm Julianne Romanello and I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's 11:11 p.m., so it's late, so I'll keep this short. But I haven't done a little video in a while, and there are just a few things that I wanted to throw out there because they just need to be said and I want to say them. For my friends in the U.S., my neighbors, we're in big trouble, and I am a little disheartened by the lack of outrage at what's going on in our country. It's completely obvious that our elections have been rigged for a long time. There's a new documentary out. I haven't watched it, 2000 Mules. It's about voter fraud, and we've known about that. Now it's in our faces, and I don't think that the movie is going to do any good because from some of the reports that I've heard about what's on that movie, it's really normalizing more surveillance, and that is the last thing that we need. We need strong constitutional protections. I think that we have to stand up and do things the hard way. That's going to require the people as a whole to figure out what they believe in. I think that it would be most effective right now, to just go back to the original Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's not perfect, but I think it's a good starting place. And in terms of protecting individual rights and giving us an idea of limited government and processes for resolving conflicts. So I think that's a sound system. I think that we're going to have to defend it against many, many attacks that it has experienced over the years. Okay, so how do we do that? I think that we need to organize in states as states. My reason for that, and I've written it several times, is that the resetters want to do away with state constitutions and state governments. I never really thought about the power of the state, the individual 50 states, so much as I have in the past 2 years. But I think that that's probably our best hope at getting a robust coalition of Americans who support the basic freedoms that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights. If the resetters believe that they need to get rid of states and reduce them to something like regional brands for ecotourism, then I think we ought to do the opposite of that and really put the weight of the people behind our state constitutions, and then I would hope that would be a stepping stone to cleaning out the federal government. It's easier said than done, but I think that is roughly what we can do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But so back to the mess. Our elections are rigged. Everyone who is in a political office or a bureaucratic office right now is probably bought and paid for, or they are completely clueless and easy to manipulate. I haven't seen anyone really that is standing up to digital identity. There are some people who are on the conservative side of things who are talking about doing an alternative system of digital money and looking at health freedom and things like that. That's still going to get us in the world of surveillance. It's still going to require us to be able to verify our identity. It's still going to track and trace all of our interactions. So to me, that seems like it is not a good solution. It's not what we want. We have to take on the surveillance firsthand. So unless a politician or policymaker is talking about the dangers of digital identity, I don't think that person has any credibility. Okay, that's not to say that they can't be brought on board, and I think that probably the tough task that we're faced with is to unite and articulate the dangers of digital identity and social credit scoring, human capital scoring, ESG scoring. Those are all roughly similar. So we have to articulate that in a very powerful way to the mass of people, okay? Because the forces that are in favor of digital identity are very powerful. They're the largest corporations. They are the military-industrial complex. They are the most powerful elite mafiosos that are around. So our opponents are very strong, and it's going to take the public opinion and the determination and the righteous indignation of a broad group of people forcing these politicians to be more afraid of the people than they are their controllers. It's not easy. It sounds like it's impossible, but I think that we have to try. At the very least, we have to educate people, and we have to let them know what they're facing. I would say you need to watch the video with Amin Jabi. He is a Silicon Valley insider. He worked programming the cameras that are doing the facial recognition for decades, and now he is a whistleblower, and he's really trying to fight against those cameras that are going up all over the United States. Every single city in the United States. It can be a city of 4,000 people, or it can be the largest city. Every single city is doing the exact same thing. That ought to make you wonder. And it's not only the U.S., it's the entire world. Everyone is rolling out these smart city plans in lockstep, and it's all for a sort of standardized, global, portable, verifiable digital identity that's going to include every single transaction that you make in your life. It's going to be attached to that digital ID. Now, I'm trying to talk fast, and I know I never talk fast. I listen to myself at 1.5 speed. But I'm going to try to speed through this, but there are a couple things that I just don't want to forget to say. Think about what digital identity in a permanent ledger of your life, think of what that means for a child, for an 8-year-old child, okay? For a child who is old enough to understand what monitoring is, what a lack of privacy is, a child who is old enough to feel ashamed at having made a mistake, or, just doing something that was normal at the age of 6, and now when that child is 8, they hear about it, and they think, oh, I'm so embarrassed about this. Okay, I have 4 kids, and I'm drawing on an actual example I can think of, and I don't like to say too many details about my children, but you can see this happen if you're a parent, and there's nothing more contemptible, more shameful than the idea that someone would not protect a child from feeling embarrassed about something like that. Now, if you have a digital identity framework, every single thing that a child does from the moment that that child is in the womb until adulthood, it's all going to go on that digital identity. If they play with the wrong person at school, if they take the wrong way home, if they don't put their glass bottle in the proper bin to recycle, it's all going to be monitored, surveilled, and used against them. Okay, now we can see that the powers that be are setting up a framework for for a common good, for social justice that is tied to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They all sound very nice if you read them quickly and you don't dig deep into their actual meaning. But once you do dig deep and once you learn to understand the buzzwords, and that's something that I try to do on my posts and in my other little videos, is explain what those buzzwords mean. Once you understand those, then the program that the powers that be are trying to force on our kids, on ourselves, on our elders, it is brutal. What it really does is it tells the individual that the self is worthless. Plain and simple, that's what it does. It says, you cannot think for yourself. You cannot decide for yourself what's right and wrong. You have to check every single common opinion, every tradition, every sense perception, every logical conclusion that you might have come up with or experienced. You're going to have to check that by the standards of the community, and the community is always right, and you must always sacrifice yourself for that community. They are trying to confuse people about their biological sex. Okay? How much more blatant is the evil of this program? Okay? And that is the core of what they're trying to push on young children. Now, I'm 41 and I'm set in my ways. And I like to think that I'm impervious to the kinds of social programming that the powers that be, that shouldn't be, are putting out there and brainwashing the masses with, because the same words are repeated over and over and over again, okay? But young people are not immune to that. That's all they're hearing, and they've lived in a very skewed, sick world for the past 2-3 years. I mean, it had problems before, but we all know that it escalated immensely in 2019, 2020, okay? So just think of how this generation of young people is going to make sense of this radical shift in the way that we are treating other people, the way that we're looking at what choices we ought to make. You know, everything is going to be judged by someone else's standards. And they know that they're being tracked and traced. They know that the economy is being demolished on purpose, so that they're going to have to bend over backwards just to get a gig job that treats them as a worker, okay? I think it's so disgusting. And you can see it here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have every single educational institution. It's owned by the same philanthropists that are pushing the 4IR. They're funneling young people, and I mean starting very, very young, into coding, into aerospace engineering, which of course sounds a lot fancier and more theoretical than it actually is. What they're going to really do is use human skills until they have trained the robots and can, you know, do away with the human beings that train those robots. Okay, and cybersecurity and and healthcare. Okay, you know, these are the only outlets that the young people are going to have if we do not step up and stop it. And they're going to be, like I say, they're going to be tracked and traced. They're going to be aware of that. They're going to know that they only have these certain pathways. And, you know, how can you even come to terms with the meaning of that when you know that every single thing you do is recorded and scored? I drive on one avenue many times a day. And the number of cameras that are pointed in your face, and the radar that is attached now, I don't know if it's radar or if it's LiDAR, or I think we might even have sonar. The number of cameras that are pointed constantly, you're being bombarded. And I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but I just want to say we have to get these down, and we've got to do whatever it takes to get them down. Now, I think that that's going to have to take, we're going to have multiple prongs. You're going to have a sort of radical prong, like a street team prong, and people go out and they put posters everywhere, and you help people understand what a smart city is. People don't know. They don't even know that they're living in one. They think that the cameras are normal. They think that they're going to still be driving their cars, their gas internal combustion engine vehicles in several years. They're not. Okay, they don't understand that mobility is being managed, it's being manipulated, so that we will not be able to leave unless our ledger says that we have complied with this self-sacrificing, moral and ethical program that no one signed up for, and that doesn't serve anyone, regardless of your faith, your political leanings, your demographics. It harms everyone. Okay, so you have to have a sort of radical, I think, approach. I don't know, punk rock approach to getting the word out about this is what a smart city is. This is what it does. Here are the people who are implementing it in your community. Now, I can go to the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce website, and I can give you a whole list of people. Tulsa Innovation Labs, I can give you a whole list of people. I do this quite frequently, and I still haven't had people from the major, political parties. Let me qualify that and say that, they're people who consider themselves members of these parties and who are members, and they want to think that those parties work, and in some sense they still work in little ways. Okay, they do get people in touch with each other and other things. I won't go there, but those people still have not taken on the Chamber of Commerce. They have not taken on the foundations. And in fact, most of if you're a mainstream political group, you're going to get money from these foundations, and so you're going to be loyal to them, and you're not going to want to go push, in the opposite direction too hard. Okay, but we're going to have to. If you want to stop this program, you're going to have to figure out who's doing it, and it's not very hard because it's all the people who use the buzzwords. It's all the people who are putting in the programs for education, healthcare, mental health, affordable housing, food security, financial literacy, all this laundry list of programs. You just look at who is implementing it, who is funding it, and there you go. You can trace it usually to your Chamber of Commerce, to some task force on innovation or economic development. It's very easy to find. Just look at my post that has top 10 buzzwords, and I have posts that have over 100 buzzwords. Just use those 10, search for your city, and you're going to find out who's doing what. Okay, you have to call attention to those people, and we have to shame them because they're doing something that's wrong. I'd say try to educate them first, because maybe they have good intentions and they just don't know. But at this point, they should know. All right, and especially when you find the people at the top, they should know. Where was I gonna go? Okay, so educate people. Different prongs. You need a radical prong. I think you also need a sort of businessman's, conservative-ish, traditional prong. This is like, the people who want to say, oh, well, that will never work. You know, they think that they're going to make this ESG thing work, but it's never going to work. Okay, now, if you follow my post, then you probably know that I think, okay, the goal is for it not to work, right? Money is not the driving incentive now. It's value, and what value means is behavioral compliance. Okay, so that's the new currency, is conformity, behavioral compliance, and that falls under the heading of value. I think I have it. Oh, I'm gonna get distracted. I told myself I wasn't. This, here you go, future of the corporation, moving from balance sheet to value, and that's by our friends at the World Economic Forum. Okay, value is behavioral script. But, so we know what that means, but a lot of people don't, and we've got to sort of get that mainstream, middle of the road group to start getting vocal about how these policies are going to hurt business, they're going to hurt national security, they're going to hurt family values, they're going to hurt freedom movements, liberty, whatever their cause might be, wherever they fall in. And like I said, I always think we need to have a very broad consensus to make this even thinkable, right? But you have to have lots of people working on articulating how these new economic reforms are bad for business, they are bad for America or whatever country you're in. I mean, we're all the same now, right? They are bad for traditional values, they are bad for progressive values. You've got to make those cases and convince the people who are just like very inclined to follow a reasonable approach. And you show people, well, this is against the law, this is against the code, this is not going to make money, oh, this is going to really it's going to wind up in a bottleneck of traffic and instead of free-flowing motion, and like they claim. Okay, now, like I said, we understand that there's a darker motive, but in order to try to bring people on board with the goal of establishing a statewide consensus that the Great Reset has to be stopped, okay, then I think you've got to sort of meet people where they are in terms of articulating the reason why we must stop what's going on. The cameras must stop because they're related to ESG, because that's going to kill businesses, and nobody wants that. Okay? We got to do it, I think. And there are some people who are better at that than others. I think you have to find where your niche is and be able to make an argument to the people who need to hear it, who you are uniquely equipped to reach in your your daily interactions or whatever. Okay, and so the third prong that I think we need is a hardcore legal and forensic investigation into corruption, and that's where I think you have hard-hitting investigations into conflicts of interest. You use all of the law, all of the constitutional provisions, all of the natural law provisions that you can to show why these certain people, and I'm talking the people at the top that we can identify, why they are criminals, so we have to show that they are engaging in criminal activity, they deserve to be prosecuted, and if the courts won't hear it and do justice, then they must be tried in the court of public opinion. Now, some people will say, oh, the court of public opinion doesn't matter anymore. I beg to differ, because if you look through all of the literature that is published by these resetting groups, they are all concerned about trust. I mean, that's what blockchain is about, is trust. They're concerned about reputation capital. I mean, that's what they're moving us toward, is a system of reputation capital and social credit scoring. Well, we have the same power over them that they are trying to use over us, and we must use it. Okay. Also, they try to run these programs. I say this over and over again. I think it's so important. They try to run these programs through institutions that people generally trust and that have a good brand, hospitals and educational institutions, particularly universities. And if you look in your state, it's the same model as my state. And in Oklahoma, every single university has been brought into the Fourth Industrial Revolution plan by the foundations, that is philanthropic foundations, and private equity investors, and the government. Okay, they are working together. They use the university's brand because Americans are naive and they trust in it, and I think that's probably true of other countries as well. And they implement these programs through those institutions because people will listen to them and fall in line with what a university says more quickly than they would some government program. Okay, so that is to say that I think perception management is very important to the resetters, and so we have to be willing to really break up their ability to manage the perception, and then we have to create our own narrative about what is to be perceived. Okay, and that's not really an area that I personally am very comfortable with, because the idea of just working in the realm of perception is a little bit disorienting, and it can be dangerous, right? But there are those of us who see what the agenda is. We see how evil it is. We see the very rapid progress of it, and we care about our fellow human beings, those living now and those who are to be born. So I think we have to be ready to really blow up the good reputations, the undeserved, the incorrect good reputations that some of these people have in our communities. And and you do it through those three prongs. You have a sort of radical street team prong, you have a conservative businessman's prong, and then you have a hard-hitting criminal investigation and forensic. You do audits, forensic audits, and you look at criminal wrongdoing, and you bring that all in front of the public. That's to sort of arrest the development. But then we have to organize as states and say, you know what, we're not going to budge. We have these rights. We're going to use the laws that are articulated, that most people believe in, and we're gonna stand for those. I won't say too much more about that, but I did post a plan that has some task forces, and I think the effort is so big that you're going to have multiple task forces, and you're going to have many people with many different talents all get on board around a common enemy, so to speak. And what is that? That's got to be, I think, the digital ID, because one, I think, is the most evil, and two, the other nefarious programs don't work unless you have the digital identity on which to write the permanent ledger of your life and to control your access to all sorts of privileges. Basic privileges, like where you go, what you eat, what you can buy, who you can speak with, who you can see in the hospital, whether you can get health care or, anything like that. So people have to take on that bigger aspect of this, the bigger component. I think, you take on the stingers, because you don't want anyone to get them, okay? But only do that until it's useful. The main thing that you have to take out is a digital ID. And so unless the mainstream resistance is talking about that, I would not trust them completely. Use what they have to say that's good, but always keep your eye on the target. It's digital identity for impact investing, which is a program by which people will make money for forcing you to behave in a certain way. And I won't go into some of the sick ways that they're going to do that, because I've already been on here longer than I meant to. It's 11:42. But anyway, America, you've got to get active. You've got to stop thinking that this is never going to happen. You've got to stop thinking that politics, as usual, is going to solve it. You need to look around. You need to see that they're opening up the border to let desperate people in to disrupt everyone's way of life. Okay, now I have nothing against legal, regular immigration. Even in some cases, like I think you should be charitable and on a personal level, and we need to help those who are in need, right? But what's happening at the southern border, it's a controlled demolition. They're bringing people in who are in gangs. The cartels are taking over. I've looked at Customs and Border Patrol reports. I have a friend who has reported to me that, yes, the cartels are moving in. Tulsa in particular is a hub for them, because we have interstate or highways that crisscross, and we have multiple ways of shipping goods and people quickly throughout the whole country. Okay, so we've got cartels coming in. You have desperate homeless people. Like, all of these situations are designed to demoralize, to debase, to disrupt, to terrify people, and just to force them into their homes and into complying with an agenda that terrorizes innocent people. Okay? So you need to see it. You need to recognize what's going on. You need to recognize the pattern of impact investing. It is the easiest pattern. You just know you have trauma, and then you set up a pay-for-success contract or some kind of contract that's going to remedy this trauma. It's going to move the level of trauma from a higher level to a lower level, for example, and people are going to make money off of that. So what do they want to do? They want to track, trace, a baseline, intervention, and then measure the impact. And they're going to make big bets on it. They're going to come up with a derivatives market to attach to those big bets, and it's going to be sick. If you work in the corporate world, you're in big trouble. You're going to be doing professional development that's going to indoctrinate you for the majority of your work. That's what you're going to do. You're going to take all of these terrible online modules that are going to be personalized to you, and then they can actually, deliver through neuro-linguistic program. They can turn you into a new person. It sounds very far-fetched, but it's not. All you have to do is open up the white papers, open up some of the tech magazines, look at the legislation and the policy that's been passed. It's all there. Okay? If you look at, property rights are not secure. This return of property to indigenous peoples, native peoples. Now, it's happening all over, and it's really for the Agenda 21 and collectivization of land, okay? It's not to help Native Americans or redress any historical ills. This is the same corporate privateering and piracy that we've seen over and over again. So all of that's happening. We've got a major food shortage on the way. We've got terrible geoengineering. Like, people, we've got a mess, and you can't be afraid of it. Take small steps. Go to your community meeting. Print out the Smart City Plan. I have one. You just ask a question about it, and you have the plan there so that you have proof. You can't be written off. It says Smart City Plan, or you find a similar type plan, and you just ask about it. And I guarantee you that, you're going to have a city councilor squirm. He's going to be irritated. He's not going to like it because you asked a question in front of other people, and he'll probably deflect it. But the other people in the room will listen, and they'll say, "What is that? What is it?" And then they'll come up to you, and you'll say, "Oh, this is the Smart City Plan." You don't even have to understand it all the way, because you're going to have it there, and you show it to them. But we have to get many, many people to understand what a smart city is, that it is a digital prison, that it is inescapable once it's totally rolled out and people are already accepting digital identity. It's going to come through your employer. It's going to come through your school. Lastly, it will come through government. They're sneaky like that. So, face the facts. We have no free speech anymore. But we do have a few people who still have principles and who still believe in free speech and who still believe that you shouldn't trap people or deceive them. And, some people think that there are things that are worse than death, like compromising your morals or, harming the innocent. So I think if Americans are not to be the most pitiable people who ever lived and the most disgraceful people who ever lived, then we are going to have to figure out any way possible to get people activated. That's kind of a tricky word there. To get people active, to stand up for what's right, and be willing to pay the price for it, to pay the ultimate sacrifice. That when you know how bad this stuff is, I think that it is an easy choice to make. So thank you for listening to my rant. I hope some of it made sense and it wasn't too much. And I'll try to start doing more of these, in the next couple of weeks. You guys take care and good night.